Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Fourth Heritage Mindset. Today, I'm very delighted to have a good friend of mine, Dickson Wasake, to review or to discuss with me his take on my summary paper, the EDISAC framework. For those who are new to this channel, remember every weekend I bring you a video whose topic is to challenge and inspire the change of mindsets, especially our African mindsets. So without wasting a lot of time, Dickson Wasake, you're most welcome to the Fourth Heritage Mindset.
Thank you very much.
What's up with the beard?
I'm John the Baptist. I'm in the wilderness. I'm saying, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
Okay, that's good. That's good. The first question for me to you is, who are you and what are you up to?
Well, thank you very much. I call you Kesa, and in case your viewers hear me say Kesa, it's because I knew you from back in the day, Chirunda Emmanuel Sunlight Arthur. But I'll tell you about myself. So for the people who are listening, my name is Dickson Wasake. In my day job, I'm a chartered accountant. I am a director in a global accountancy firm, which is my title is I'm the equivalent of a partner. And we're in more than 140 countries. I live currently in the UK, in Jersey. In my night job, I'm actually a preacher of righteousness. Jesus called me from bondage to lead his prodigal sons and daughters, to teach them how to hold on to him.
So back to the subject of the day.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You're one of the first people who read my paper, the EDISAC framework. For those who haven't read it, how would you summarize it?
First of all, actually, like you said, I actually read your first book, the Fourth Heritage. And if you remember, I actually wrote the foreword. So for me, it is exciting to actually see many of the ideas that you actually started in the Fourth Heritage. I see them summarized in the EDISAC. Yes. So I think the best way to summarize the EDISAC framework is, as you correctly put in your paper, it is actually a thinking framework so that Africans can break free from hopelessness, and then we can start solving our own problems. What you actually did in the EDISAC framework was quite beautiful, especially in your section, which is about errors. You talked about killer mindsets. I think there were 6 killer mindsets that you said we Africans suffer from. And from what is interesting to note in your paper is that these killer mindsets affect both the elite and the non-elite. Then your paper goes on to explain how Africans can break free from these mindsets. And some of these mindsets are tribalism, inferiority complex. And you actually say Africans, we never build knowledge towers like other civilizations. And therefore, we do not know how to start to solve our problems.
Not anymore. We used to.
True. You also, in your paper, for those who do not know, you actually, the EDISAC acronym, I did actually check this up just before the interview. I refreshed my memory. It talks about error, dominant identity, individuation, seeking, articulation, and civilizational existence. What you really show in the paper is that many Africans start from error, and then the rest of the acronyms is a progression where someone moves on towards civilizational existence. And it is a brilliant paper, like I told you when I did the original review.
Wow, I appreciate that. The next question I would like to ask you is, after reading EDISAC, anything new that it has contributed to your mind frame or to your mental positioning as an African?
Yes, I think, as I said, I'm a preacher of righteousness, and I loved what you covered in the paper from the religious side. One of the key things that you showed and you spoke about is that many of us Africans, when we take on, for example, Christianity or Islam, we see them as foreign religions, and we don't often see these religions as our own. One of the things that this causes is that many people then either reject, for example, Christianity, and they say, let's stick to our African religions. Or many people have a duality. They probably believe in God, but they go to the witch doctor and then they smoke a mindi and do all these things. What you expertly did in your paper is you, for example, showed how many of the early African many of the early Christians were Africans, and it is quite beautiful. It means that for an African who is also a Christian, they can actually own Christianity because they can see that they contributed to its origins, even way before many of the European missionaries who came to Uganda. The first missionary who came to Uganda in 1877. But if someone takes this even further back, they can see that many of the early fathers, like Augustine, in the early 200, maybe even 300 AD, they were Africans. And then an African can comfortably be both a Christian and an African. And this is not a foreign belief.
Wow. Yeah, well put. I mean, I'm not a Bible scholar or a preacher like you. So
I cannot say that from what I know about you and what I read in the paper. No. I think you're being self-deprecating, Kesa.
No, I just, we grew up with the Bible and Christianity.
Yes.
So I just did a little bit of further research just to position my mind in regard to these things, such that I can have a rational backup to things that I believe, such that I don't say I am this just because I was born.
Yes.
So that's what I was trying to get to. I was using rationality or explaining people who want to be Muslim and African, Christian and African, or whatever religion. Logically, how can you reconcile your Africanness and that foreign religion?
It was a beautiful exposition, if I may say.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because it is so sad to see us educated Africans have to quarrel or argue about things that we should not be arguing or quarreling about, or things that can divide us as Africans. Things like religion. There has to be a mental way we can reconcile our Africanness and those foreign religions, such that we own our identities and our heritages.
Yes.
Good. Then the other question I wanted to go to is, if you look back on the paper, what is that one idea or the most memorable thing you got from the paper?
I think you're going to hear that all through the questions you're going to ask me. I always put some Christian or religious spin, but well, that is my identity. One of the things that I liked, besides the fact that many early Christians were Africans, I liked the fact that you emphasize that many Africans need to transition from oral tradition to writing. And the thing I loved was the example you used of that passionate Jew, Eliza Ben Yehuda, who had the foresight, as you explained, to recreate the ancient Hebrew language for the modern Jews. And you were showing in the paper that this action here, almost like one drop in the ocean, resulted in the Hebrews seeing themselves as a nation, and eventually 1948, modern Israelis. And I from the paper, you're showing that this action here in itself contributed to them eventually being successful. One small country being so successful in so many fields, coming down from their identity. And I think that was an enduring. I loved that example.
Yeah, no, it's very eye-opening. There are not many people who know that.
Actually, you're right, because I had never heard this until actually your papers and that showed me this for the first time. And you remember we actually spoke about it in detail.
Yeah, yes. For any viewers who don't know what we are talking about, before the modern nation of Israel was created or even dreamt about, most Jews never spoke Hebrew. Whether in the Middle East or in Russia, in anywhere, they spoke other languages. So their view of their homeland was going to be a country where people speak lots of languages, mainly maybe Russian and German. But one person had this insight that we can't have a modern Israel nation and people are not speaking a national language. So this one person, as Dickson you've mentioned, in the 2030s, decided to have a personal crusade to resurrect the Hebrew language for his nation. And within 20, 30 years, the country that ended up being Israel adopted the ancient language of Hebrew with modern modifications. So I said this just to inspire Africans. Many of us don't have national languages. We just need one person who is inspired to say this one language can be.
Lugisu. Hallelujah. Come on, Hua.
Yeah, and you write it, and
Yes.
you get people from other tribes to adopt it. And once you have 10, 20, 100 thousands of people, then the nation or the leadership will come in. Yeah? So we don't have to wait for government to do these things. That's what I was trying to get at in the paper. You and me, there are things we can do depending on our talents, and our interests. Good. The next question is, would you recommend this paper to other people? If so, what would a reader, especially an African, gain from this paper?
The short answer is I would not only recommend it, I would highly recommend it. And the reason why is that, Kesa, you and I have had long conversations about, the mindset of our fellow Africans. And like you, I was actually in a way set free to truly embrace my heritage when I left Africa. And I think I've told you a story whereby until I left Uganda, I used to hate African music. I, for example, used to love R&B. And when I went to the Caribbean, I lived in the Bahamas for a short while. When I went there and I saw that these people knew more about Africa than me, my mind was set free.
The light bulb went off.
It went off. And so for many of our African brothers who have never left the continent, they do not go to see a different civilization. Many of them then do not appreciate just how much our own African mindsets limit us, and we cannot see how to break free. Your paper, I think, let me use another Bible instance, is like your paper is like you are Moses actually leading the Israelites from slavery, because you are a son of the soil. You grew up in Africa, you traveled and saw what it was like in another place, and then you led people out slavery through this paper. And it is something, as I said, I would highly recommend it, because I think I read a lot, but when I read your paper, it blew me away.
Wow. Thank you so much.
And I'm speaking that as a truth, not as a promotion, because I'm a man of God and I speak in truth. It blew me away.
No, I really appreciate that. I put in my spirit and soul in this paper.
Yeah. It reflected. It is like the peak of your
my existence.
Yes, it is. It is a peak. Yes,
when that day comes and I'm being judged, what did you do?
I agree.
The number one thing I will say is I wrote this paper because I thought I could help my fellow Africans open their minds.
Yes.
Open their minds. It is. We need to do this. Otherwise, we will keep whining about Europeans, colonialists, white people, as if they are our daddies. We need to man up and open our minds and be strong and build our societies. And that brings me to the last question. When we talk about building our societies begin with family, our children. As a parent, what ideas did you get from the paper that will influence the way you will be educating your kids? Because I wrote this paper partly because I'm thinking about my kids, my family,
Like you, Kesa, I'm a parent. I'm actually a father of 5, and living here abroad, where you bring up African children or children in African heritage, where they're a minority, it can actually affect their psyche quite radically. I remember an instance a few years ago when my daughter Lauren is now 12. She actually came from school and she was sad because a child didn't want to sit next to her because they said she was brown, and so they thought she was dirty, because obviously the default is most people are white. So that deeply affected me. And the implication of this, the way this girl thought my daughter was dirty, was probably because they thought they were superior and my daughter had an inferiority. And the way my daughter was affected was probably because she didn't know her heritage. And your paper talks about this, you speak about Africa as the cradle of civilization. Many of our children, even in Africa, not just abroad, grow up with this inferiority because they do not know their heritage. Many civilizations in Africa were actually superpowers. As you explain in your paper, you talk about a couple of them, and we didn't learn this in school. So for me as a parent, what I would do is I would use your paper to actually build up their knowledge, to help them have this identity so that they can be confident to know that they too are kings. They are not slaves, they're not new slaves, but they have a right to sit at the table. They have a right to claim every heritage as their own. They have a right to actually become an individualized African, as your paper says. That's what I would teach them.
Wow, that is great. That's great. Last week a couple of weeks ago, I talked with another reader of this paper. It opened her eyes about so many subjects, and in regard to teaching her kids, she even was envisioning the fact that she needs to tell the kids that they are the ones who might have to think about the African integrative language.
Yes.
Either for Uganda or wherever they end up. The kids, people have to grow up realizing, depending on their talents, what they know, what their intellect, they need to contribute to the solution. And if you inculcate that in kids as they are growing up, wow, the sky would be the limit, right?
That is true, because it is worrying that it would be worrying if we have children who are growing up away from Africa, and they, if for example they cannot speak the language, they might lose their heritage. But from your paper, you're saying in fact they can break away from that and still be Africans when they are broken away from that.
All we need is a program. All we need is some spirited, inspired people to start the program. For me, I'm not linguistic. I don't think I have anything to add on language.
That is not what I saw. I mean, but you could be like the brains behind it. You know that I will say this for your readers. I have been pushing you to say, when are you starting? I'm even willing to give you the first 200,000 shillings, or if you want 200 pounds, because I am waiting for this.
It's going to happen next year.
Yes,
it's going to happen next year. Next year we are going to launch. We are going to start an organization such that we can start having real deliberations and start executing programs and plans about how to retrain and learn the right things. Good. So we've come to the end of the question and answer. One last thing as we sign off. Anything you'd like to tell my viewers?
I think the thing I would say is that you said it, that you poured your heart in this paper, and it reflected. There were many times, as you remember, when I read the initial manuscript, I just put comments saying, wow, I love this. I think you do not do yourself any justice by not talking to others more about it. Or maybe there are many others who need to hear this, and because they haven't experienced it, they do not know what you're talking about. I know you in a personal capacity, as a friend, but I'm not promoting you from a friend perspective. I have seen this paper, I've read it, and I know what it can do. It can actually liberate us from our hopelessness. So I definitely would recommend someone to just go and get it.
Wow, thank you. And for the viewers out there, if you haven't gotten a copy of the paper we are talking about, the EDISAC framework, you can download it for free on my website, www.fourthheritage.com. It's all for free. All right, that brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you very much, Dickson. And viewers, everything we do on this channel is to inspire the change of mindsets. And I hope this conversation it motivates you or inspires you in one way or another, maybe to want to read that paper or to just think about some of the things we've talked about in another light. So thank you for watching, and talk to you next week.